All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for eduKan TV. This week we are talking about campus safety, and maybe a little different twist on campus safety than most people talk about. We're going to look at some issues facing large institutions, urban-based institutions, and then we're going to talk about some of those special facing small institutions in small towns. And so today I have with us Mark O'Brien, who's the Vice President of SpectraRep. And along with Mark O'Brien is Chief Mary Kendrick of the Sterling, Kansas Police Department, and Clay Thomas, who is the Director of Physical Plant at Sterling College, which is located in Sterling, Kansas. Just as we're preparing for the show and getting ready to go online, I see a news feed that comes out that in Newtown, Connecticut, there's a shooting at an elementary school. And we're hearing more and more of these happening. And so let's just jump right into it. Mark, if you will introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about SpectraRep, that would be excellent.
Sure. Mark O'Brien, I'm with SpectraRep. We're a company that provides emergency alerting solutions for education. One of the things we focus on is standards-based alerting and trying to get alerting systems to interoperate with each other to improve notifications during emergencies to students, faculty, staff, and even to first responders.
Okay. We met with some work that you do with the Virginia Tidewater Consortium, and there are several large institutions in that area of Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing? Because you're doing more than just coordinating for the institutions. It's sort of a comprehensive plan that takes in the entire community, correct?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we do, and what you're referring to, I believe, is we work with public television stations all over the country. And we're actually able to use some of their over-the-air broadcast television spectrum to, using our technology, deliver secure, private, targetable, encrypted information to improve emergency response on campus. So basically what that means is we use the television broadcast transmitter to send out public safety information and get all the benefits of television, which is broadcast once, receive many. So for things like sharing helicopter video and bandwidth-intensive information, it doesn't matter how many people need to see it. You don't run out of bandwidth. Unlike television, this is not going to TV sets. We're actually sending it to computers with a special receiver that we have. And everything is encrypted, and it's even targetable, which is not something you normally think of when you think of television broadcasts. So in partnering with the broadcast facilities and layering on some of this technology that uses Common Alerting Protocol, which is the alerting standard, actually global alerting standard, we're able to trigger signage, roadside signs, siren systems, individuals with computers. It's really an interesting twist on being able to make sure that the message goes out even when the cell phone networks or other publicly accessible networks might become congested.
And Mark, do you work with the institutions individually through that project? So if there was something that happened, say, at Hampton University or Old Dominion, this system can specifically go down to just that institution?
Absolutely. It's actually targetable down to each individual receiver. So the chief at ODU could actually communicate just with the chief at Regent if he chose to. He could then open it up to all of his officers on campus, and then he could further, as the incident progresses and gets more serious, go in and push a button or two and open it up ultimately to the Norfolk Police or Virginia Beach Police or Fire Department, SWAT team, or whoever else might be coming in, assuming they have the receiver ahead of time, which is what we're in the process of deploying right now. So it's incredibly scalable.
Oh, excellent. And just for those who are in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to ask those at any point along the way. In our studio here, we have Leslie, who will shuttle those questions over to us, and we'll have the experts answer them. Tell me about the scale. How many police officers? I mean, if you look at ODU and Regent and Hampton University and Tidewater Community College, I mean, tell me the size of this. I mean, number of police officers maybe. I mean, and again, if you start getting into all the police officers in each of those major cities, departments, and then how many students, how big is this?
Well, we have several deployments. That particular one is for higher education, and it involves potentially all of the schools in the Tidewater Consortium, which I believe is 13 universities. We're currently working actively with a subset of those, and some of them are quite large, like Old Dominion, who has, I forget how many police cars they have, a sizable force of sworn officers, and then some of them are fairly small. Norfolk State, for example, that has a small number of cars and I think, I don't want to misquote, 15 or so sworn officers. But all of that gets augmented with outside resources. So despite whatever the size is of the institution's police force, what we're working on is ways that we can improve communication and interoperability with the neighboring jurisdictions so that if outside law enforcement has to come in, they don't know the campus as well as the law enforcement team right associated with the university. So having them, when they come on campus, already have the blueprints for the building that is on fire or where there's an active shooter, having the crisis plan, having a chance to review that information as things are unfolding, you're never going to get them up to the same level as university sworn officers as far as knowing the campus, but it's a step towards them coming in with knowledge and actionable information as opposed to being an outside entity that has to start at zero, essentially. And that's really the objective of what we're trying to do, which I think is at the heart of your question, is to enhance the ability of all responders to an incident on campus and raise the level of awareness and information that they have to work with so that when something really bad happens, they're that much further along and are closer to being an extension of the campus law enforcement.
Mark, tell me a little bit about, and without going into specific details, an instance where your system has been deployed and maybe some feedback about the difference that it made. It doesn't, again, have to be at the Hampton or the Virginia Tidewater that we were talking about, but just one of those deployments that you would like to use as an example.
Sure. Well, the deployment that probably has been running the longest and gets used the most is in Las Vegas, Clark County, and it's for a K through 12 deployment. The Clark County School District is the 5th largest school district in the country, over 300,000 students, 350,000 students, I believe. Almost 100 sworn officers just on the school district police force. And constantly struggling to work better with the Clark County Sheriff's Department when really bad things happen. Now, even with 100 sworn officers, they don't have their own SWAT team, for example. They depend on outside resources for certain types of things. We have every blueprint, every evacuation map, every crisis plan. We have access to other resources that they would probably prefer that I not describe, but let's just say
Sure.
Useful incident tactical information that we're able to share with all of the vehicles, 55 or 57 police cars for the Clark County School District, and a smattering of receivers that are deployed with some of these outside agencies. And they use the system. It was designed for incident response, a really bad day when you needed to have the crisis plan and the evacuation map, so that if you have to evacuate the school and at the scene you go, should we send them north or should we send them south? There's a lot of thought that went into having a crisis plan, an evacuation plan that makes sense as things escalate. If you need to get them completely off of school property, for example, that they should go to the McDonald's parking lot, or they shouldn't go there for whatever reason, they should go the other direction. And as I'm sure most people watching this can probably relate, in the heat of an emergency, trying to remember that for 413 schools in Clark County is a challenge. And what they actually used to do is they would carry a lot of this around on paper. The fire department had blueprints for the schools on paper, and occasionally there would be an emergency at the school. They would rip the page out of the book, run in, deal with the emergency, and not put it back. And then when something happened, they didn't have that blueprint anymore, or things would become outdated. They didn't match what Joe's map doesn't match what Fred's map does, because Joe's is older than Fred's. And so the great equalizer was, we're just going to get you the information you need when you need it, and we're going to grab it from the most up-to-date, reliable source at the time that you need it, and send that out during an emergency to the people who should have it, over this bandwidth that's not going to become congested or collapse or be problematic because a lot of people are at the emergency scene using up cellular bandwidth, for example. So they use it out there for even non-emergencies. They use it when they need to check on something. They're driving by and want to take a look at what's going on, to pull up specific information. Even for non-emergencies, it's been used. Trying to think if I'm allowed to talk about some of the other things. Let's just say that even non-school events, when there are outside federal agencies who need information, everything is there and organized and ready to deploy as needed. It's really working like a well-oiled machine out there, and they've found new exciting ways to use it that weren't even part of the design when we designed it as an emergency response application.
And one more quick question before we switch over to Chief Kendrick and Clay Thomas. Recently in the Chronicle, I believe, or Inside Higher Education, they were talking about systems such as yours, whether it's a violation of FERPA. And we all know about FERPA in the higher education arena. And I think, and you have a much better take on this. Tell me your perspective on that and the FERPA issue, and what schools may need to think about when they're dealing with these type of systems.
Well, if you look at Virginia Tech, no matter what you do, you're going to get Monday morning quarterbacked. And no matter what happens, if it's a really bad event like Virginia Tech, there are going to be lawsuits, and it's going to be ugly. And so, as a provider of emergency systems, I would rather deal with the concern that how come you shared information about a student, even though it might have saved their life, than why didn't you, and it didn't save their life. Now, that's a biased position, obviously. I think most parents would agree that during most of the time, 99+% of the time, they don't want that information shared, but when it's going to really affect the outcome of an emergency, of course they want it shared. So finding that balance, like everything in life, it's not black or white, everything is gray. in finding how you are able to do your job and protect the students, staff, and faculty at the same time while protecting their privacy when there aren't emergencies going on. From my perspective, the only time FERPA becomes an issue in what we're doing is if people are using the information that's available for unauthorized purposes, and that shouldn't be happening, and that people should be protected against that. But to not have the information when you need it, I mean, think of an active shooter situation when you know the active shooter is Tom, and people say it's Tom, and we know it's Tom, and the first responders are saying, well, who has Tom's cell phone number? Let's call him and see if he'll talk to us. And it can take half an hour to figure out something like that when every second is precious. And that just shouldn't happen, shouldn't be allowed to happen, in my opinion.
Okay. And we'll come back with some more questions and some more comments. Let's switch over to Chief Mary Kendrick. She is the chief of the Sterling Police Department. Mary, can you give us an idea? We were talking about the Las Vegas K through 12 school system with 50 plus cruisers for their own law enforcement. We talked about Old Dominion and Hampton University, and there's literally hundreds of officers on these campuses. Can you give us a perspective of what rural rural police departments may look like and may deal with?
Our department has 2 patrol vehicles available to us, 5 full-time and 2 part-time officers. I did a brief look around the county this morning, and in our county, which is 728 square miles, we have 19 full-time officers, and we have about 6 part-time through the county. At any given time, we may have 4 officers on duty throughout the county, or we may have 3 officers on duty throughout the county. Sometimes our closest backup can be 35, 40 miles away to assist us in anything we have going on in Sterling.
And so Sterling, Kansas, population of Sterling is 2,500, 2,800?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
2,500.
With the college, there's going to be another 600 to 700 students in town when the college is in session.
And so can we make an assumption that crime is pretty low as a general rule in Sterling, Kansas?
As a general rule, our crime is fairly low.
Excellent. That's because of the great police department there. Everyone's afraid to commit a crime.
Not afraid. We do proactive police work at Sterling.
You do, and I will say that Mary Kendrick has run the DARE program and has. How long have you been doing the DARE program, Mary?
Since 1977.
Since 1977. So these kids that are growing up in Sterling have known Mary literally all of their lives, and so it's when you talk about community policing, it really does, I think, have a huge impact that people know who is on the police department, and that we talk about police officers and kids recognizing them as their friend, as someone that they can trust and confide in, and you've really built a program there where that happens.
We do have an excellent program with all of our kids. And one of our officers is very active with the college students, which we feel like is a big benefit. And he assists with some programs at the college with softball, and he's on campus a lot, involved with the football, going to the games and attending basketball games. And we think that's an excellent opportunity for him to build a relationship with the students on Sterling College campus.
Clay Thomas, you are the Director of Physical Plant, and as Director of Physical Plant, campus safety to some degree falls under your purview, I think, in coordination with maybe the student life folks and the VP for student life. Tell me some issues that you deal with on a campus of 600.
Well, and first of all, it really falls more under the Dean of Student Life. We do a lot of the supply stuff, provide the vehicles, the things like that, the equipment. But directly, they answer to the Dean of Student Life. But now, what was your question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Tell us some of the things that you're doing on campus concerned with student safety. I know you guys have some some proactive things you're doing.
We do. And again, I think like Chief Mary's talked about, just being involved with the kids, first of all, helps a lot. When all these kids, sometimes I feel like I have 300 children, and when you build that rapport with them, they're not quite so, I think, tempted to vandalize or tear something up or do anything because they know their friend has to fix this thing. But, one thing we've been working on a lot is lighting, making sure everything is adequately lit. We went to a keyless entry system on our buildings for the dorms for the students to get in. We were fortunate that we're a little off the beaten path in Sterling, Kansas. Rice County doesn't have an interstate or anything, so we've really had to sit back and take a look, and we've been real active the last couple of years with this committee made up of the academic dean of student life, the CFO, the communications department, the maintenance and such, IT. All these people with different outlooks trying to make this whole thing a lot better for us, a lot safer for the students. Like I said, we're fortunate that I want to say we're in the backwoods, but we're a little off the beaten path. So we kind of had that luxury to not have to worry about a lot of things. And it's real easy to get in a denial that, well, things happen in other places, things don't happen here. Well, things do happen here and can happen here and will happen here. You never know. So we've really been working the last couple of years trying to set down every time one of these events happens. It seems like we end up having our committee meeting and we look at what they did, what they responded, and we look at the plan that we've been working on, and maybe we need to adjust this because this is what happened there. And so in the last couple of years, we've really made a proactive attempt at trying to have good planning.
So you and I were talking in preparation for the show, and you were saying that you were I don't know if you were at a conference or you were talking to someone, and they were talking about a large campus, which actually tends to be a little more controlled with the traffic. And they said one of the comments when you have an incident is shut down the main gate. And you and I kind of laughed about that. Tell about when you tried to think about shutting down the main gate at Sterling College.
Yeah, the main gate that would require about a mile of fencing, I guess, because we're basically about a 40-acre campus, and you can walk in from any angle, any part across the street. And I think we have no less than 10, maybe 11 driveways into different points at the campus. So, we're wide open. If there's, when the guy said secure your main entrance, I kind of had to chuckle a little because, we have to think about something different there. Right.
So when you and no one likes to think about it, and sometimes when you were at a smaller school, I've been at several small schools, and you think about, particularly in a rural setting, well, this is stuff that happens at big urban universities, stuff that happens in the city, but the reality, it can happen absolutely anywhere. And we tend to think of those things as someone coming on campus, and with a gun, or in the last incident, a bow and arrow, and just stuff that we try not to think about, but yet you have to be prepared for. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys have put in place, and then we'll get Mary's take on how that kind of ties into what the police department can do to help. So tell us about some of those things that you're doing proactively on campus and some of the plans you guys are making.
Well, it wasn't very long ago. Just, there's not even, we really hadn't even discussed where to go, what to do. If say there was a shooter on campus or something, where do you go? Or if there was a tornado, we're in Kansas, it could be a tornado, Nobody ever talked about innermost, lowermost. And so, the back of every dorm room now has a guide to bid. It's on the campus website, and it was just trying to. One thing we did, and our dean of students was real good about really going out. And a lot of colleges have their plan on their website, which I think is great because you can look, you can see what they do, you can see what works for your situation, and try to come up with a good plan. And you can sit and do tabletop scenarios all day, and no two things will ever be alike. No thing will ever absolutely fit your plan. You just try to come up with the best guideline that you can. There's a old saying from the service, no plan ever survives the first contact intact. So, and try to keep that in mind when we're trying to plan and trying to organize and trying to figure out. And, we started having, at the beginning of the year now, with all the staff and faculty, we have mandatory meetings with them where we go through the book and discuss these things and throw a few scenarios out. And, Professor Joe, what if you are here and this happens, and so we've last few years, we've really stepped it up a lot, I feel, just in an effort to make sure everybody stays safe. We lose you, Mark?
I can't hear you, Mark.
Oh, there we go. I'm back. Sorry.
There we go.
He usually doesn't miss a chance to talk.
And, the lips were moving, just nothing was coming out. There are a lot of people that would like to have a mute button, I think. So as you look at an incident that may happen on Sterling's campus, Mary, how do you start dealing with engaging the other agencies? You may have one officer, maybe two officers on duty, with a campus that's 40 acres, 10 entrances, and something has happened. How do you start that process, and how do you start interacting with those other agencies?
Well, we have good cooperation with all of our agencies within the county. We meet once a month, the third Wednesday, I think, of every month, and we share information. I'll give you just a little example of an incident that did not happen on Sterling College, although we had some intel that there may be something going to go on. My sergeant, called me at midnight and said he had some information there may be an incident going to happen on Sterling College. We brought out extra officers, and they were assigned strictly to Sterling College to see what was going on, any extra movement, who was out around that night. For a large incident, we would have as many officers that we have in Rice County available. We also have a working relationship with the officers in Reno County, Barton County, McPherson County that we can call in, and the Kansas Highway Patrol also provides support. They have helicopters, they have a SWAT unit if one would be needed. They also have hostage negotiation unit. We're not all schooled on that. Some of us have been involved in some negotiations with people. I personally have done some negotiations myself. I don't know how many officers in the county have ever done that. I think one more officer that I'm aware of. We would want to bring in what I would call the experts, which would be the troopers, hostage negotiation team. But we can probably, within a short amount of time, get officers from surrounding counties in here and assist our agencies, including the Sheriff's Office, Geneseo Police Department, Little River, Chase, Lyons PD, have them in here in a short amount of time.
Okay. Mark, you were going to say something in that last segment.
Well, Mary, is your radio system P25 compliant now, or are you working on that?
Is it P25 compliant? You can tell by the look on my face that I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Well, let me just say that we're all old enough that we remember analog television where you turned on the TV and one thing came out, and police radios where you could push the button and other people on your analog frequency could hear what you have to say. The world is moving to digital. Television has gone digital, and now when you're watching television, there can be 3 or 4 or sometimes more channels that are actually coming out of that transmitter. That's what gives us the ability to send private, secure, encrypted information in that same broadcast. Police communications is also going digital. And that allows things like narrowbanding and interconnectivity with other jurisdictions, and you can push the button and talk to the people in the neighboring counties and let them know what's going on just as easily as you could talk to your own folks. And so all of these capabilities improve communications not only during incidents but just in general for all the things you're talking about. And digital technology is at the heart of what makes that technically possible to do those things. The challenge, even for technical people who get the same look on their face, is all of these individual technologies have tremendous promise, but unless you're able to somehow get it all to work together in an organized, structured way so that it does something easily, and I hear over and over and over again, I can't tell you how many times, from the law enforcement community, technology does not solve my problem if it's technically perfect, but I can't figure out how to use it. So doing it in a way that is as easy as push to talk, but allows better things to happen is a challenge. And I don't want to sit here and say we've solved that because it's an enormous problem, but the things we're doing in companies like SpectraRep are doing to try and tie these systems together to make it so that when you push the right button, you're able to communicate just as easily with the SWAT team from 35 miles away as you are with your own two vehicles. That's where all this is heading. We're not there yet, and that's where we start to realize the promise of interconnectivity, and it's just as easy to talk with outside agencies as it is with inside, whether it be over a broadcast TV signal that covers half the state of Kansas, and anyone in there can get it if you target them, or a little push-to-talk system just on campus so that when they arrive, their radios will work on your campus and you can talk and not have to use pigeons to go back and forth and get information, which is part of what happened on some of the big events. I mean, especially this really came to light during 9/11, and here we are 12 years later. There were so many people from other jurisdictions who came in to help, and they were literally passing notes. They could not talk to each other. And here 12 years later, we've made great improvements, including things like the P25 standard, which is the standard to make that all work together, and things like we're doing and other things. But there's still so much more to be done.
So, Mark, let me ask this question. You have a rural police department with 5 officers, 2 cars. You have a small school in Sterling, Kansas. How do they implement a system such as yours? I mean, is it scalable down to that size, to where the county could, maybe Rice County could start coordinating these things, and not the scale of a Hampton Roads area? Is the system scalable down to that small?
Well, some of our technology is some of the internet-fed technology. Some of our tools work over the internet just as well as they work over television. We can do things like push a crawl across the bottom of a computer screen that looks like the crawl you would see on a TV broadcast when there's a tornado. So we're all familiar with the red bar pops up and text starts crawling across the TV screen, and you better pay attention to that. So we're doing things like that are implementable on an extremely small basis, could be on tens of computers, for example, to just use that to get people's attention and notify. Some schools make students and everyone turn cell phones off in the classroom, and rightly so, but then text messaging and alerting applications that use cell phones don't work. So the operative word in alerting is now, and probably will be for a while, multimodal. And what multimodal means is don't rely on one way of getting an important message out to the people who need to have it. You should be sending text messages. You should be doing reverse 911. You should be doing digital signage. You should be doing sirens. You should be doing desktop crawl alerts. You should be using broadcast TV to interoperate. No one has the budget to do all of those things. So the trick for any educated consumer of any product, particularly emergency alerting, is the best bang for the buck. So if you're a small group, can you become part of a bigger regional play? I don't think our broadcast TV application would work for the small college, but it might work for a 7-8 county area where all of the fire department and police department use it, as well as 3 or 4 or 10 schools that are in that same jurisdiction. And that's what we're working on in the Tidewater area. We started with the schools. We're now expanding to a group called Orion. I can't remember what the acronym stands for. But that is a public safety communications private system that has limitations because it's microwave based, and unless you're a microwave hop, you can't get the data. So this is a way to extend the reach out to anyone who has a little appliance like this in their police car that then pushes information out over Wi-Fi to your smartphone or iPad or whatever, or even a little USB dongle you plug into the laptop that lets you now get information through that path, through the internet path, and through whatever other paths you may have.
So maybe I'll address this to Clay and to Mary, and it may be more under that dean of students responsibilities, but so often we hear that faculty members are a front line to students who they feel are suspicious or something's just not right. They're interacting with those students. And I know the Sterling Police Department does a great job of being really involved with the students. Clay, you do an excellent job of the students know you and you know them. But are the faculty being utilized, and they have a mechanism for being able to say, you know what, I just kind of get the heebie-jeebies from this person. I don't know what's going on, but is there a communication system out there, and have you guys, actively pursued that?
Yeah, there is something in place for that. I'm not part of it, and I don't know that I can really speak to the detail of it, but I know it exists. If there is an issue with a faculty notices something with a student, there is a chain they go through and do discuss. If they think there's a problem or if there's somebody that needs looked into or looked after. I know it exists. I know it happens. I think it's a pretty quiet thing with all the privacy rules
Sure.
and such. So I can tell you it exists, but I'm not a part of that, and I can't give the details. But there's been instances when I've worried about a kid. And same way I have my chain, the appropriate chain to go up to, and I know it gets followed through.
Okay, good. Mary, Mark was talking a little bit about early warning systems from the county level. I know you talked about getting other counties involved, down really to the campus level. Are there alert systems in place? I mean, do you have stuff that, I know there is a siren that goes off in Sterling, Kansas. It's a tornado siren that we have in place if there's a storm coming. But do you have in place anything that's an alert system for the campus or the community?
To my knowledge, we have nothing that's specific to the campus. You addressed the tornado siren that we have available. Our radio system, all the officers within Rice County can communicate with each other on our handhelds and on our vehicle radios. We do not have computer-aided data terminals in our patrol vehicles. Lyons PD has a small, but that's not connected to our dispatch, so we don't have that in Rice County at all available for us. We have a wind system that the police department and the fire departments and EMS. Our city has a power plant, so our power plant employees, and understanding that small communities, most of your firemen are all volunteers, and some of them work for cities, so they are on the wind system. So if there is some kind of an emergency, a WINS message can be sent out via our cell phones, and we'll get that pretty quickly. You were talking about us being able to communicate with the agencies around us. We are not 800 megahertz. Highway Patrol and Reno County, our next neighboring agency is. our only communication with them is through dispatch. Now, the Highway Patrol in our area does have our frequency. We have put out the extra effort and bought some fairly expensive scanners for our patrol vehicles, so we do monitor Reno County to see what's going on, and our dispatch can call their dispatch, but they have to do that by phone. We are narrow banded, but we can communicate with Barton County, I believe, if we still maintain. I know the sheriff's office can still communicate with them. I'm not sure we can, which would be the county directly to the west of us.
Okay. What other thoughts, Mark, do you have for schools, big and small, that are looking at trying to implement some systems? Where would you start? Where would you recommend Sterling College start with a campus of 600 and knowing that the police department is pretty actively involved with the college and their students? Where's a place to start?
Well, I think the place to start is looking for points of failure in your plan and in your communication system. So it's one thing to say, well, we hired XYZ company to do text messaging and it's opt-out, and so we have all the students' cell phone numbers except for the students who opted out of it, and so potentially then we're not liable for notifying them if they've opted out. That's not clear to me, but that could be the case. And you check the box and say, okay, we're done, but then you have a cell phone failure, a cell tower failure, not necessarily because a tornado, although it could be a tornado took the tower down, but even if there's a fire in a building in a small campus like that, you're going to have 300 students in the parking lot standing there looking at it, taking pictures of it, posting it on their Facebook page. Some may even be taking video of it and shooting live video and putting that up on the web going, look, XYZ Hall is on fire. And in a small isolated area like that, you probably are being covered by one cell tower and it'll get overloaded. We've seen this recurrently. Here in Washington, D.C., on the 4th of July, we've done some work with the U.S. Park Police, who are responsible for public safety during large crowd events in Washington, D.C., and recurrently, you get 400,000 people on the National Mall. I don't care how many cell towers you put up. You cannot make a cell phone call. You cannot send a text. It is not because they're not working. It's not because they fell down. They are not built for worst-case scenarios, and if you get everyone trying to use them at the same time, it doesn't work. We saw that during the earthquake here in D.C. that got a lot of press last year. No one could make a cell phone call. Everyone is so reliant on their cell phones these days, and the alerting system was cell-based, and I was here for the earthquake, and quite frankly, it was, in my opinion, a non-event. We had some cracks on the National Monument and the Cathedral and a few other things, but no buildings fell down. It was not a major event in that sense, but the cell phone network ceased to work for probably 4 hours. Until people stopped trying to call and check in. So I would say, no matter what your alerting plan is, don't just check the box and assume that you're good and you're going to be covered. Now, no one has the budget, I know from experience, to check multiple boxes, but so you have to look at where your vulnerabilities are. Maybe you're better served with, if you have limited budget, digital signage in the cafeteria and public places where you can flash up a message and then trust that those people will run out and word of mouth tell others and at least get notified. Maybe an inexpensive digital sign is a nice addition to a cell-based system, so you have some redundancy. Going all the way to broadcast TV and what we're doing on that side probably does not make sense for a small school in isolation, but may as part of a bigger plan where you actually really are tying together regional resources. However, the desktop system may be for a few hundred users for $1,000 a year or something like that, may be the kind of thing that pushes through and gives you additional multimodal redundancies, which is not reliant on the cell network, but the Wi-Fi in the school, which is probably fed through fiber or copper, which is not going to go down when the cell networks go down and will push through if students have their cell phones off. Ideally, you should do a little bit of everything, but no one can. So small schools should be looking at the maximizing. If you can tell 50 people in the cafeteria, you can trust that 500 people are going to know about it within 10 minutes. And if you can do cell phone notifications before the cell network becomes congested because everyone's there posting pictures on Facebook, what can you do knowing that's going to happen? So maybe you can only use that for the first alert, but you're not going to be able to rely on it 30 minutes later or 20 minutes later when it's likely to be congested. So then what are you going to do? Just think, Mary mentioned tabletop exercises and regular communication. That's a big part of it too. So when people come in to help you, they know what resources you've got. They know that you can't close a gate, but here's what you can do. You can post officers at this corner, and this corner, and you're going to cover 80% of the people who might try and come in and out. Which sounds like exactly what they're doing. I would say if I had to boil all that down to one sentence, it would be don't just check the box and assume you're good.
And we talk in terms a lot and think in terms, as just the breaking news story in Connecticut is about, a shooter on campus or something like that. And being in Kansas and, the weather is a big issue. I know at one point, there's sort of these swings between really dry and really wet. And a couple of years ago, there was a lot of water very quickly. And, for the most part, Sterling was cut off. The little river to the south flooded, the creek to the north flooded, the stuff to the east and west. Sterling was to some degree cut off from everything. But what really is scary there are the tornadoes. And the Greensburg tornado. Clay, when was the Greensburg tornado that came through?
I think that was 5 years ago, last May 4th.
Yeah, and so, this tornado, the town of Greensburg is about 1.5 miles wide, and a 2.5 mile wide tornado came through Greensburg. And so it just devastated this town. I know Clay's sister lives in Greensburg, and just trying to, the stuff you don't think about, just trying to get in touch with her. I mean, there were no phone lines. The cell phones were down. Those type of things. If you can imagine what that would have been like if it came through Sterling with 600 college students in addition. Talk about some of the experiences, Clay, with Greensburg, and Mary chime in also about some of the things that you've learned about a weather event and just some of the stuff that happened in Greensburg, some of the stuff that they thought they had prepared for but hadn't.
Well, I think something that size, like I said, that tornado was over 1.5 miles across, category 5. And, I think that's where, and we've talked about this in some of our meetings since then, because being I have a connection there, a family member that lived there and went through that. You think about all your, they had a municipal electric and all their police and their fire department and everything else, and hospital, all these people, at this point, all these people are taken out of that scenario because they have their own families to take care of. They've lost their own houses. They're trying to make sure their children, their spouses, their parents or whoever are safe. And so at that point, you really become dependent on the outside coming in, which I can't speak for the rest of the world, but the Midwest, we've really, we can really depend on our neighbors out here. And I think we really saw that happen there, that the neighbors stepped up and helped until everybody could kind of get back on their feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark, this was not as big a catastrophe as the tornado in Greensburg, but the ice storm that came through here in 2007, I think it was, that took all the power out around the county, and the only people that had power was the city of Sterling, I believe, in Rice County, because we have our own power plant. And we were kind of overwhelmed in Sterling by people coming down here and wiping out our grocery stores, and the gas station a couple of filling stations, we were running low on fuel, and people coming here to eat in the restaurants and stuff because there was no place else to eat around was kind of a devastating event for our county, not on the magnitude of Greensburg, but that was in itself a kind of a different scenario with trying to find places for people to stay and getting a shelter up and running, which happened within 12 hours. And police departments and fire departments going out door to door, checking residents and looking for the elderly or people on oxygen that needed to be taken somewhere for safety.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. And again, you talk about, you think about in this small town, those who are there to protect and serve, Clay, as you mentioned, are the ones that are having to deal with the disaster themselves. I mean, they are dealing with their house, blown away, looking for their own family members, and not really running down to the fire station because they're on the local volunteer fire department.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in our own meetings. If a tornado struck our campus, well, yeah, I'm the physical plant director, but if my kids are here, and I think anybody's the same way, you're going to look after your family first, and then do what you have to do.
Exactly. So we've got about 8 minutes left. Mark, why don't you kind of summarize just some thoughts where you think campus safety needs to go, where it can go, where it should go, maybe some emerging technologies that are out there, and then we'll wrap up with Clay and Mary.
Okay. Well, along those lines, just some comments on what Clay and Mary were just talking about is tornadoes, you're susceptible there. So if a tornado comes, you shouldn't be, and you're not, trying to figure out at that time what to do. So you need to have a plan for things that you can anticipate. But that's only the first step. Then you need to communicate the plan so that when an emergency happens, when an anticipated event occurs and you say, we have a plan for this, who knows the plan? Who can quickly access the plan? How can you communicate if the plan has multiple components and elements, which you're on phase 2 or level 1 or wherever you are on the plan? And Clay mentioned, which I think is great, that you're putting evacuation maps up in the dorms. And so, we better think ahead and say, if there's a tornado coming, here's where the closest shelter is. Again, I would caution everyone, I'm not suggesting Clay and Mary here, but universally, don't just check the box. We put up the notice that the nearest shelter is here, so we've done our job. If people don't know it when the emergency happens, then you still have more work to do. And again, I'm not saying that that's the case here, but my thought is you need to be thinking through all of those scenarios. Have people who know what to do when something that can be anticipated happens and can respond quickly. If Mary is away on travel, someone else should know exactly what she knows about if a tornado hits, and I'm sure that's the case there. But this is so part of communicating the plan is what's your communication strategy. Printed signs on the dorms with locations of the shelters, digital signage, text messaging, cell alerting, desktop notifications, all of those things come into play with communicating both to the public and to the responders, and they may be different messages, what is supposed to happen. And so again, as a vendor, I know from experience, no one has the budget to just go fix everything with the best technology there is. No one does. So find the best bang for the buck, but think through all the scenarios and don't just check the box.
Yeah, I think that those are great points, and I agree. We do have the cell thing, and we've used it several times, mostly weather type events, storm events, and it's worked quite successfully for us, fortunately. I'm not sure in how many cell phones it takes to overload the tower. We've been good thus so far, but like I said, we're a pretty rural community. We don't have 100,000 people trying to call at once, but a few years ago, somebody asked, what would you do at the college if this happened, if that happened? I think, we were all kind of standing around and looking at each other, and I think we're, I'll brag on the college here a little bit that in the last couple of years, we've really worked hard at trying to make sure that there is the plan. Like I said, no plan ever survives the first contact intact, but, we all have that green book that when we come to our meeting, because there's about 8 of us on this committee, and some of us don't live in the community, which is good. So if something happens, we have that same access to that information off campus. So, we've worked pretty diligently at it, I feel, and we're going to continue to work because it's, that book's almost a living thing. It changes by the day to what's going on in the world.
Exactly, and it's tough working at a small institution with the limited resources. A small rural police department, the limited resources. And I think you guys are an example of what can be done with limited resources, and constantly looking for the next thing that you can do, and what is an effective, efficient way of really, as Mark says, finding the next box that we need to look. Don't just check the box, but find out what else is happening. I really want to thank the 3 of you for joining us today. It's we're bumping up on the end of the hour. Mark, any final thoughts as we get ready to sign off?
No, I just would say that from my experience, I know everyone that I work with, and probably anyone who got into law enforcement, is committed to doing the best that they possibly can, and most of them are not in it for the money. They're in it because this is really important to them personally. So take that passion and try and share it beyond just the people in the blue shirts with the badges, and enroll as many people as you can. As I get text messages even today about another shooting on another campus somewhere, it seemed like that never happened, and now it seems like a week doesn't go by that something like that happens, large and small campuses. And so it takes a village, it takes a whole community, and it takes technology, and it takes passion, and it takes money. And you put at least some of those pieces together, and you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Closing thoughts, Mary or Clay?
One thing we didn't touch on is the foster parent program at Sterling College, which I think is great for our kids, because the people of this community and some people from Lyons open their homes up to the kids from Sterling College, and they can come there for a place to relax, come do their laundry. Some of them I know fix meals every Sunday for the kids, let them come into their homes, take them in as their family members. What better way can we get these kids involved with the community so that we know the students from this college didn't have this foster parent program going?
Yeah, it's a great place. I'll put my shameless plug here. Come to Sterling, you'll love it.
And we will post a link to Mary's project, and next eduKan TV show will be January the 18th, and we will be talking about outsourcing services on a college campus. And if you can, join us at the Consumer Electronics Show. I'll be doing a presentation on the new math. Is analytics adding up, as part of the Higher Education Summit there at the Consumer Electronics Show. And again, Mark, Mary, Clay, thank you guys so much for joining us, taking time out of your day, and thank you for being part of the show. Thank everyone else for joining us out there in the web TV world, and we look forward to our next show on January 18th.